Hi guys, it's Jazz, president and founder of Multilingual and Philanthropic Incorporated. So I'm going to do this really short series, Empathy Talks, just because of the fact that as a nonprofit organization that is advocating for foreign language education, I want to talk about the people aspect. I talk a lot about the multilingual aspects, but I want to put emphasis on the philanthropic so that in a way, it's a great way to motivate and inspire people who want to learn a language but don't know how, or they sometimes have been learning a language but they're kind of off and on because they keep losing inspiration. So I want to be able to feed you with this series. And I think that with the philanthropic aspect, we have to realize that foreign language education, as much as it's really cool to be multilingual, I'm going to be honest with you, as someone who does speak 10 languages, not fluent in all of them, but just taking the time to learn another language, it's like a huge power to me, because I feel like the more I learn a language, the more I research culture, the more I do anything that involves me being able to listen and talk to people, the more I feel like I'm connected to people. And I think that's just the general thing. It's as much as it's cool to be able to speak 10 languages, I think that we kind of need to move past that. So, with every language that I learn, I feel like I learn it for a specific reason. Like every language I've learned has had a purpose. From French, I had learned French from a very young age because I thought that, at 5, 6, 7 years old, I was really, really into fashion. I didn't care what part of the industry, I was just really into it. And I remember Google translating on my parents' computer and trying to translate things I wanted to say, and I would write them down and then I would repeat the recordings and I would just try to really just, that was just what I knew, because at the time at that young of an age, I didn't know about how to use Google and you just type in online French learning resources, because I didn't have my own computer at that time. And I probably shouldn't have my computer, a 5 or 6, 7-year-old with a computer. No. But, translating that. And I developed my language abilities around the fact that I was I'm going to become a fashion designer. I'm going to be in Paris. I'm going to do this. And French is all I need to know. English and French. English is in America, and then when I'm in France, I just love the idea of just speaking French. I don't know what it was, but I just was really, from the very beginning, I was really fascinated with French. Everything about it, I just loved. And how the media portrayed France specifically was this glamorous place that people go when they wanted to just be engrossed in fashion, which after having been there, yes, that it is a fashion capital. However, there's a lot more to that city than just what has been, has been glamorized. And from there, not only that, but when I was a senior, I was in AP French. And from AP French, that's the highest level you can get in high school. So when I got out of high school and went to college, I was okay, I'm at the highest level. I need to maintain that. I need to keep it that way. I don't want to lose these skills because again, I was going to fashion school, and as a childhood dream, I was I'm going to go to fashion school. I'm going to build my career in France, and that's where I'm going to mainly be. And I think that one of the best things for me at this point has been that I've been open-minded, because when you live in a city like LA, you're going to school in a city like LA, you realize that people are there from all different places. Los Angeles to me is an international city. It's one of those cities where people from all over the world just come just to be there, whether it be for work or for vacation or to, whatever the reason is, they're there. And I learned Spanish because I was I'm in a place where a lot of people speak Spanish. And so I was I cave. And the only reason why I caved was after my church decided to do a Spanish worship service, because they said there's so many people, we need to cater to that demographic. And went there, didn't understand a single thing. I mean, I understood words that Dora the Explorer taught me at a young age, but outside of that, I was just like, I'm lost. I understood words, but I didn't understand complete thoughts. Yeah. I didn't understand complete thoughts to know, okay, like, this is what someone's saying, like, understand the gist of what someone was saying. And people were getting emotional, and I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. So other than feeling their emotion, I couldn't really understand where that emotion was coming from. And even with German, learning that, because I had a friend from church who was from Germany, and, talking about where he's from, and, talking about languages is, I learned that language because, first of all, I knew I had people that I was going to be practicing with. So it's like with Spanish, there's plenty of people in my church who spoke Spanish. I mean, there's a whole community. And then also German. I was like, okay, well, my friend says this is a really hard language to learn. I'm going to learn it. And not only that, but I would also have him to like test out like phrases. I used to have my phone, and I'm like, okay, I learned this new phrase, and I would just read them off. And I'm like, so I learned that you're supposed to say this phrase when you want to mean this. And he's like, are you just writing these down just to say them to me? I'm like, yes, because and he told me, like, your pronunciation is like spot on, like, which is the first thing that I always work on. In any language you learn, you should always learn pronunciation rules first, so that when you're speaking to people, you can speak clearly, in a way of, like, as they say in German, like akzentfrei, like free of an accent, like you can speak like, the language without an accent, like without my American accent seeping through. And so, and I think the more that you learn a language, or the deeper you go into that language, the more you realize that there's so many different connections to your own language in certain ways. Because I think that everyone is generally trying to say the same thing. I think it just doesn't matter where you really come from, because when I was learning French, there were certain words that were really crossing over into English in a certain extent. I mean, in certain cases, because in America, we have like things like Silicon Valley, we have smartphones, we have all these different technology that came out of America. A lot of words in other languages actually are derived from us, like the word for smartphone. People just say smartphone, and like in French. I mean, you could say like un téléphone intelligent, like intelligent, like you could say something like that, like an intelligent telephone, but that doesn't they're like, no, smartphone, because it's an American-made product, or something like an iPhone is an American-made product, something like that. Like they would say iPhone for an iPhone, still same thing. They would just, Frenchify it, because but it's an American-derived word. And on that aspect is, I think it's really important overall, and I think this is like the main thing that you should really just generally take out of this conversation or this ramble, is more of, it's really important to make those connections. It's really important because, like, even when you meet people who are from different places, you don't want to like exoticize them or like glamorize like where they're from. Like one of the things I always have learned I've actually learned over time, is you want to get to know more than just the surface level what everyone knows. Because in America, especially growing up, all I knew about France was Paris. It's like later on in life, I was like, oh wait, okay, France is this whole entire country, and there's so much more dimensions to it than just Paris. I've found out that the accent can be really different from the north and the south. So like the way you learn it in school could be different in another part of France. Each different region has like different cultural aspects to it. I remember learning about Bordeaux, and Bordeaux is like, from what I can generally see, is that it's kind of like almost like the Napa Valley of France in a way. Then that Champagne really comes from a certain region in France. You learn that like even in like when you're in the north, weather can be kind of different in the south. Like even like on the coastlines, like if you're in like Marseille or Toulon, and then there's the central area, because I have a friend who's from Clermont-Ferrand, and so that area is going to be generally different. So it's like when you say, like when someone says, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from France. oh, you're from France. It's like, no, no, I'm from this like small village that's like in the middle of nowhere, something like that. Cultural norms are going to be different from the North and the South. Like, people might think that Parisians are rude, which I've heard that stereotype on many occasions. However, because when I was there as a study abroad student and I knew French, it turns out that actually was not true, at least from my experience, because I was a French-speaking person, a French-speaking American, and even though I didn't fully understand, like, my listening comprehension was not great, but all I knew was, she speaks French, yes, I have to speak slower, so that she can fully comprehend and, what I'm trying to say, but at least I don't have to speak English in my own country, a foreign language in my own country, that kind of thing. I even had people like who actually asked me out, and I remember I was invited to watch the World Cup game with someone, and they're like, I only am speaking French because my English is terrible, whatever. And I was like, fine by me, just don't speak too fast. And they're like, fine, it's mutual. So, the aspect is that I debunked that. I was like, that's not true, because I've seen them be rude to other people because they expect them to speak English, but I've never really experienced them just being rude for the sake of it. Plus, Paris is like a big city, and same thing like with Los Angeles. People just generally just don't go around like, in big cities, you typically see that people aren't like, kind of like here in Kentucky, where I was born and raised in Kentucky, and people are just generally friendly. Like, doesn't matter. Like, you're walking down the street, hey, how you doing? They don't do that in big cities. Paris is a big city, and to that standard. But if you go in different areas, the culture is going to be different. So, people might be friendlier in the countryside of France. I can't really speak to that because I haven't been to the countryside, so to say, or at least not yet. That's a plan at some point. But, you really have to understand that, you have to really be more specific. Like, I even have as a blog a blog post on our website, and I will post that as well, is that, when it comes to making friends, if you really, really like, for me, one of the things I really want to do, that's on my bucket list right now, is I really want to make a friend from Dubai. Not just because they're from Dubai, but I just have so many questions about, their demographics and because my brother went to Dubai for a school trip, and, he loved it. But, my thing is that because I've met a couple people from Dubai, but then later on in life, leading up to where I am now, I actually realized, I have some questions, and I really want to have a friend who's from Dubai to actually help me with that, And, just those kinds of things, not just like, stupid questions, like, or like ignorant questions in terms of like, oh, do you eat eat baguettes, or, all these different things that people might stereotype French people for. Like, learn something specific about their culture. One of the things that I think is really great when you're asking people where they're from, like, ask specifically where they're from. Like, I remember when I had one of my friends who's from Gujarat. I remember when I first met him, I asked him where he's from, and he's like, I'm from India. And I was like, yeah, you told me that, but I mean, like, where specifically are you from? Which state are you from? And he said to me, how many states do you know? So, because apparently not a lot of Americans know that, because they're just like, oh, you're from India, as if it's like this big country, which it is a country, but there's more dimensions to it. And so he's like, okay, like, I said, well, I have a friend who's from, like, her family is from Punjab in the north, and I looked it up geographically, and so I knew there's like, I was like, I don't know how many states you have, but she talks a lot about her culture because she's proud of where she's from. And from that aspect, I thought, okay, I was like, yeah, I mean, that's what I know. He said, I'm from Gujarat. And I said, okay, like, what, like, how different is that from, other places within, or even like looking things up, even with my friend from Clermont-Ferrand. I remember when we were talking about politics, I was asking her about gilets jaunes, which is like, I don't want to get this wrong because I'm only interpreting it based on what I've read, but they're kind of like people that are characterized by gilets jaunes, like yellow vests. Like, they wear these little like yellow vests, and they protest for a lot of specific things around like social issues or political issues. Like, they protest specific things. and she said, oh yeah, and then she just would talk to me about that political aspect. My friend from Italy, I remember, of course she's from Venezia, or Venice in English, but talking about the fact that she lives in an area that's 10 minutes away from the main area of Venice, and I actually interviewed her for a Saturday Talk episode on that. And yeah, so I just think that one of the best things is if you really want to get the most out of, when you meet people from other countries and you really want to maintain a friendship with them, really ask them about aspects of their culture. Do your research. I think that's the best thing you could do. Or, just look at one of the things I have on my phone is I have the France 24 app. And that is a really great broadcasting network where if you want to know international news that's really and truly unbiased, they just report news all over the world. And I get notifications of breaking news and things happening. So I might, talk to them and say, hey, I heard about this going on in your country. How is your family affected? Or, just things like that to really just show people that you care. And, in that aspect that you're not just saying oh, you're from Italy, that's so great, this whole country, learn more about the dimensions, the economy, learn something that you can actually have a real conversation about versus something there's one author, she's a Nigerian author, but she was telling her story in a TED Talk about how she went to college and someone asked, oh, you're from Nigeria, how do you learn to speak English so well? And she's like, English is an official language in our country. It's one of the official languages. So, just really learning more dimensions so that you can come off to them as a person who is in a way educated. You're not trying to be pretentious and you're not fetishizing them to a certain extent. So, yeah, so that's the main thing I really just want to get out of these empathy talks. I just think that it's really important to connect with people and just really keep people inspired to learn a language. It's always important to remember why you learn a language, because the reason why is going to be the reason why you keep going. And I love the fact, I love that I've had the opportunity and the fact that we live in an era where we have resources to just go type some letters in Google and actually find resources to learn these things. And yeah, so thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next Empathy Talk.